This is the new Xbox LIX, and this is the Nintendo Switch 2. Which one is better of the two? So the recent release of the Xbox LIX, I wanted to see how it stacks up to the recently released Nintendo Switch 2. Both are a 2025 handheld gaming console from Nintendo and Xbox. But how do these two compare? Because while they are both from the three big manufacturers, there is a lot of differences between the two. While both of these have big names behind them, the philosophy and how it works is way different. Starting off with the body and the ergonomics of the two, because the Xbox LIX is much bigger and more ergonomic than something like the Nintendo Switch 2, with it being just more like a slab design. This is more like a tablet with magnetic controls on the side, and this feels like a proper controller with a screen in between. This is much different. While they're both kind of similar in size, when I hold them like this, they are much different. This is much thinner, this is much thicker. This has no ergonomic grips, just a straight slab design, where this has really nice grips on the back that feel much more like a proper controller. In the ergonomics point, there isn't really much competition. The Xbox LIX is the clear winner. It's just much better in hand, although it is a little bit heavier. In hand, this feels a little bit heavier because of the way it's made, because it's a little bit more like, you know, cutting into the skin, where this is just more ergonomic. Just ergonomically, this is the superior of the two. Nintendo Switch 2, like I said, is kind of like the controllers are detachable, which is a nice benefit for other things later in the video, but overall it is a slab design, so it's kind of like holding a tablet with magnetic controls. The Xbox LIX is a much different design. This is like holding a proper controller. This feels really nice. This is like a grip for controllers, and then we have a normal proper traditional controller design. Feels much better in hand, much more ergonomic, just better for gaming. But it is gonna be bigger in its shape, so it's gonna be a little bit less portable. Moving on is the screen. The Nintendo Switch 2 has a much bigger display than the Xbox LIX, but the thing is, this can go up to 120 frames per second, and this can go up to 120 frames per second. This is a full HD panel, and this is a full HD panel. So side by side, they are pretty much identical panels, with this being a smaller screen, while this being a bigger screen. So in that regard, I would have to give it to Nintendo Switch. But I do feel like the panel themselves is a little bit different. This is bigger, but this seems a little bit better for some reason. I feel like the colors and just the frame rates and how it works, the ghosting and everything, just feels to be slightly better on the Xbox LIX, in my opinion. Well, on paper they're pretty similar, almost the same screen, just this being the bigger of the two. I feel like the Xbox just feels better for some reason, but that could be my preference or just the way I see it. Another thing is the speakers. On the Xbox LIX, we have two speakers on the sides of the screen, which are phenomenal. They sound super nice. They're one of the best speakers on a handheld I've ever heard. While on the Nintendo Switch 2, there are two speakers on the bottom below the screen, which are not bad per se. They're much better than the predecessor, but they're just not as good as the Xbox LIX. So hardware wise, I feel like the Xbox LIX is once again the better of the two. There is one thing that the Nintendo Switch 2 has over the Xbox LIX, where this is primarily used as it is intended to be used, with controller grips and everything like that, but it's gonna be a little bit different. If you want to connect it with a dock, you can do that too and use it like a normal traditional PC, but this is the way it is made. So you're gonna play like this. Where on Nintendo Switch 2, you can take off the Joy-Cons, so the controllers can be taken off. You can put the screen on the table and play like this. You can also connect it to a controller and use it like a hybrid console, where this is the screen and use the controller separately, or even put it on a big screen and it just natively works like a console. So it is much more like a console gaming experience and more like a hybrid console experience, where the Xbox LIX can also be used like a hybrid connected to a big screen, but there's going to be a little bit more differences. It's going to be a little bit more setup intensive to make this work, with a separate controller and going into settings to connect it to a bigger screen and make everything work the best it could. In both cases, I feel like the batteries are pretty good. They're not maybe the best out there on the market. I feel like the Nintendo Switch 2 doesn't have that great of a battery. It is good, but it's not the best out there. It's definitely a step back from the Nintendo Switch OLED, where the Xbox LIX has a really nice battery for the power that it has. And this is pretty much where the similarities of the two end, because this is much more like a Windows-based PC in a body of a console, where this is a proper console experience. But the software on the Xbox Li X now is much more console-like, because when you turn it on, it right away goes into your library, or essentially it goes into the Xbox app. And from here you can play all the games you have on all the different launchers, because this is still based on the Windows 11. Even though right out of the box it feels much more like a console, like I said, it's still a Windows-based PC. So all the libraries like Steam, Xbox, EA are available on this. While on the Nintendo Switch 2, you are basing it solely on the Nintendo library. So whatever is made for it, it has to be dedicated to this console, which can be a plus and a minus. But this just gives you more options and way more games than the Nintendo Switch 2, which means you have just more possibilities and more games for it. With that being said, these two are much different in that regard. I feel like those that want to play Nintendo Switch games are gonna prefer the Nintendo Switch 2, while those that want to play more AAA games are gonna prefer the Xbox Li X. So this is kind of like a really hard comparison, because while on paper they're both handheld gaming devices, their approach, their hardware, everything is pretty much different, and it's gonna be much more different depending on what you want. If you want a gaming experience that is just straight like a console, that is also a hybrid console that can be used on big screen and on the small screen like this, then the Nintendo Switch 2 is definitely the one to get. If you want something that is the best out there on the market in terms of power and gaming possibilities, the Xbox Li X is the one I would go for. It is definitely the way more powerful of the two, and can play way more games at even better frame rates and resolution. So technically speaking, out of these two, the Xbox Li X is the more powerful of the two. In my opinion, it's really hard to find anything bad about the Xbox Li X, but there is one but here: the price of it. Nintendo Switch 2 was hated for the price that it launched with, and people were not happy because, you know, it costs a lot and it costs pretty much like other home consoles. But the Xbox Li X is $1,000, meaning that it's way more or even twice as much as home consoles or something like Nintendo Switch 2. Depending on your market, you could literally get an Xbox Series X, if not from a store, maybe a second-hand one, and a secondary gaming handheld console for the price of the Xbox Li X. So it is a hard pill to swallow, because from the technical side, it's literally an amazing console. There's a lot to love about it, and there's not much I would say that isn't good about it. But then when we talk about the price, this had a lot of people being negative about the price, and this is almost twice the price. So it's gonna be hard to justify the price unless this is exactly the niche product that you're looking for. So on paper, I would probably prefer the Xbox Li X, but when we take into consideration the price, I'm gonna have to leave you with that question for yourself. Which one is the better of the two? And which one is better for you? If you have any questions about the Xbox Li X or the Nintendo Switch 2, let me know in the comment section down below. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I hope you guys enjoyed this video once again, and I will see you next time.